It's my friend. This is Brother Dooley, aka the Beantown Ghetto Shaman. Yeah, up real early in the morning. This rising today. Hope everyone's doing good. Pretty up early before my family wakes up, before my children and my wife wake up, and I'm going to attempt to do a nice video for. And I'm gonna jet off to the gym and do my workout, my Qigong and Tai Chi and stuff. But before we even start, I'm going to do a little sound therapy with the family out there. So I'm gonna do a little singing bowl action. And let's use the healing frequencies to start off our day, evening, and watching this, all right? So I'm gonna set this up here. And I'm going to get busy. Hope y'all doing well. Sound helps here. Now, I'm gonna do a little chanting with y'all. These are a couple of things I do in the good rising before I start, my day and get my grounding going, get my intention going for the day and stuff. So let's do some chanting together, some healing sound together for a second, all right? So I want you to sit up straight, have your back nice and straight, get that energy flowing through your body. And I want you to do all your breathing through your nose. In Qigong, what we do is we breathe in very deeply through the nose until we can't breathe in anymore. We hold our breath, hold your breath for a second and then exhale slowly. So when you breathe in, have your tongue, put your tongue on the roof of your mouth, breathe in, and when you can't breathe in anymore, hold your breath, and then exhale, bring your tongue down. So bring the tongue is up when you breathe in, then bring your tongue down when you exhale. All right. So we breathe in. Hold your breath. And then exhale. Breathe in again. Hold your breath. And then exhale. Breathe in. Hold your breath. Then exhale. Now, just matter of fact, before we even go into the chant, just hold that place of meditation for a moment. Okay. This stuff is for free, my friends. You know, sometimes the way we go through this so-called reality, a lot of times what we're taught through society a lot is that we need material possession. We need things outside ourselves to be happy or to be content. And that little breathing exercise right there show you that's not the case. That you can generate a sense of peace, wellness, happiness within, you know, and that it doesn't cost you anything. You know, you don't have to seek anyone out to experience that, you know, it's just within. So this is some Palo Santo. This is great to clear energy, to keep the vibration high around you. It's similar to sage, you know, which is another great tool for cleansing. And let's do a little chanting. So breathe in, another breath. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Say 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 la ilaha illallah. Sit with that vibration for a second. Now I'd like to say a do a couple of ums, and then let's get into this talk here. So breathe in again. Hold your breath. Breathe out. Breathe in again. Hold your breath. Breathe out. Let's do it one more time. Breathe in. Hold your breath. Say Okay. It's a quick way to get your day started, a quick way to rise your vibration. Um, the chant I did first was a Islamic Sufi chant dedicated to understanding the true nature of reality, which is that all is spirit, all is one, and all is the great universal mind, which animates in various forms. All is one. Um, Second chant we did was which is a very ancient chant, which you can find within the Hindu mysteries, which you can find within the Kemetic or Egyptian mysteries, Timerian mysteries. And this is the ancient sound that is said that got everything going in creation. So these are good different tools that you can use to ground yourself and to bring healing to your life. All right. Now, just guess I'm in the mood of sharing things with y'all. This right here is hoppy. I wanna introduce family to some of the medicines we could use. This is hoppy, or rapi, depending on sometimes on how people pronounce it. But it's tobacco with different herbs, tree ash, different things, and it's a shamanic snuff medicine. Um, it's a very powerful medicine. It's a masculine medicine, which, as you know, tobacco is it's a it's a masculine yang type of medicine. A lot of these teaching plants and fungi, some of them are masculine, some of them are feminine. Because like like the seven laws of Tahuti or the Kabbalion, good book to get. The Kabbalion talks about the seven principal laws that govern this reality. And one of the laws is polarity, the dual opposites. So you find that even in nature, where you have dual opposites, where you have some masculine plants and some feminine plants. Um, More of the masculine plants you'll see, it kind of throws you in like bam, hits you hard. So Rapi or Hapi is a great tool that people can use to cleanse their auric field. There's many of times I've experimented with the Hapi and I've said to myself, I'm feeling a little down today, or I feel a little saddened or depressed. And everyone feels those things ever so often. Just living in the world that we live in, you can't help but turn on the television or social media or whatever, and you'll see so many different negative things just been bothering you, just hitting you left and right. So if you're a sensitive person, if you're an empath, if you're a person that actually feels, not walking around here like some cyborg or robot, then of course you can sometimes be affected by that. And a good way to deal with a lot of those things is to cleanse your aura, to keep your aura strong, to keep the aura strong so you can't have lower vibrational entities attached to you, or lower thought forms attached to you and stuff. So Hoppy is a good way to cleanse your aura. It cleanses it out. There's times where I felt like I said, where I felt off-centered, and I would use the Rapi at that moment, or the Hoppy, and I'll feel more grounded. It brings a real sense of groundedness to a person, and it brings a person into a very natural state of meditation. All right. So Hoppy is very good, or Rapi is very good for many different things. It also clears the sinuses. So, the late Dr. Sabi, God bless him, he told a lot of people and educated a lot of people about the benefits of electric foods, of having an alkaline diet, eating high vibrational foods to support your own growth and evolution. He also spoke upon staying away from a lot of dairy products and a lot of mucus forming foods. All right. So, not to say that I'm free of eating dairy foods. I like pizza. I have to work on that. And there's other things that I know I could cut out my diet. Um, every day we have to work on ourselves, and everything in moderation too. You can't really beat up on yourself sometimes because stress cause acid in the body. Uh, so these things are real. So what the hoppy does is really definitely gets the mucus out. You'll start coughing up a lot of mucus and getting clearing the sinuses, clearing the lungs, and you feel like you could breathe better. So I'm gonna do a little hoppy right now, just to give you all an example of how it works. 1 second. I'm gonna put the hoppy on my hand here, and then after that, we'll go into this morning's discussion. All right. So I'm not gonna put a lot. You know, sometimes you put a lot if you're in ceremony. Hoppy is really used a lot in different ceremonies, particularly ayahuasca ceremonies, even used in combo ceremonies, different things. And it's a great complement when using other medicines. So, for instance, ayahuasca is a very feminine medicine. They call her the grandmother medicine. So it's a great way to balance out the energies in regard to the polarities, in regard to, say, for instance, if your person's dealing with the ayahuasca, now you have the grandmother and then you have the hoppy, the grandfather. So you have the grandmother and grandfather present. All right. So as you can see, I don't know if y'all could see it, but I put a little rapi and hoppy in my hand here, and then you have basically two type of hoppy pipes. You have one that you could blow in someone else's nose. So you'll see in ceremony, usually the shaman is there and he has the pipe and he says, you know, and they blow it right up in the person's nose, and they both do both nostrils. And then if you ain't got a shaman or someone to assist you, you could have your own personal pipe, right? Like I have right here, and it's very easy to use because you pack the rapi within one the bigger opening, and then you use the smaller opening to put in your nose, and then you blow. That's how it works. So I'm gonna put some of the rapi in here. All right, put it in there, pack it up. Then, like I said, it gets the mucus out. Your eyes get watery, and sometimes you get more energy. That's another thing with the hoppy rapi. If you're feeling very fatigued or feeling tired, it's a good way to get you up and going too. A lot of people in the jungle, when they deal with certain medicines like the combo, when they deal with certain medicines like the rapi, the sananga, these are all different things that a lot of warriors would use, a lot of hunters would use in the jungle to keep them up all night, to give them stamina, to increase their vision, to increase their hearing, all kinds of stuff. So may blow this up the nose. All right. Usually, normally people start from the left, so I'll keep with tradition today. Okay. To the other nose. As you can see, things coming up a little already. It's a very good cleaner for you. Again, getting cleaning the sinuses, getting that mucus out and stuff. Very good for that. It brings a real good sense of grounding. As you can see, my eyes getting watery and stuff. Brings you into a good state of grounding. So, my name is Brother Dooley, aka the Beantown Ghetto Shaman. From Boston, I'm from Roxbury. And I've been through many paths. Let me close this window because there's so much traffic going by here. So y'all can hear what I'm saying. Okay, it's noisy. Oops. Okay, back again. And also, Happy El Rapi is illegal too, so you could definitely be able to purchase it legally and do your thing with it. I advise people to check with an authentic source before purchasing your Rapi. Just don't want to be throwing anything up your nose like that. But yeah. But yeah, my name is Brother Dooley, also known as the Beantown Ghetto Shaman. I've been through many different schools of thought, and I have to give credit to my parents first and foremost, for being able to have an interest in metaphysics and an interest into spirituality, mystic traditions, and all that. They raised me with awareness of the mystic tradition, and I am eternally grateful to both of my parents for a foundation like that. And but also, I have to give credit to myself as well, because this is what my soul asked for. You know what I mean? In the early 2000s, I was studying a lot with Tibetan Buddhism, particularly the Mahayana and Vajrayana tradition under the Kagyu lineage. And during that time, I was reading things like the Tibetan Book of the Dead and learning about how a soul picks its parents. And when a soul is in the soul plane, and I'm not talking about Snoop's movie Snow Plane. When a person is in the soul plane, or before they even incarnate in a physical body, a soul asks for all kinds of lessons to be learned. All kinds of situations to occur for that soul's own personal development and evolution. So they say from the scriptures that we pick our friends, we pick our parents, we even pick our enemies, all kinds of different scenarios and different things for us to learn, to participate in the big stage of life, and how all of us are different characters on this big play. It's like even William Shakespeare said at one time, he says life is nothing but a stage or something like that. And it is in all actuality. So I picked these two parents of mine, and I picked the most best parents I could ever have during this lifetime for the lessons and the different things that I would need for my own life journey. And I appreciate that. Beyond having that foundation with my parents, I ventured off and really started to explore my own path and still embracing the things I learned from both of my parents, but also exploring a lot of different other schools of thought, um, particularly in my teens. Learning from a lot of the OGs in the community that were dealing with a lot of Black metaphysics, like a lot of quote unquote Afrocentric type of metaphysics. At that time in my life, learning about the Nation of Islam more, learning about the Nuwabians and studying a lot of the ancient tablets, you know, chilling and learning from a lot of my Moorish science brothers, and learning about the legacy of Noble Drew Ali. So there was a lot of different schools I went through, particularly in my teens, my very early teens to my mid 20s, and I learned a lot during those stages in my life, and still learning. And what's so interesting is my mid 20s, I started to dive more in what we call the Shaman Path, or the medicine man, medicine woman path. And it's been a great path for me. Great path for me. It really started off when I was in college, and at that time, I got a scholarship, to attend this college named Northeastern University, and at that time I was studying art and theater, and it was an interesting time being there. I actually dropped out. I dropped out of college because I was like, it was just too much for me at the time because I was at a different place in my life, um, still one foot in the streets, dealing with all kinds of crazy folk, and then coming into this college where it was, for me, I felt it was like a bubble from this fake utopia from what was going on in the hood in different places. So I dropped out, and eventually I came back when I was working with the elderly, and I built with some of the elders that told me like, hey, you need to finish up. So when I went back to school, that's when I met a friend that told me about psilocybin mushrooms, and that was the first time I was able to eat magic mushrooms. Beforehand, I never dealt with anything like psychedelics or ethogens or anything like that. For me, the most I would maybe indulge in is probably just some weed, yeah, and some beer or something. um, and that's about it, because that's what I felt Black folk was into in the hood, culturally around the board. We didn't experiment with all that other stuff. I think it's different now, particularly with a lot of the younger folk, dealing with the trap music and all that, and you see it in the music, particularly. You see people talking about Molly's and Percocet and Xannies and all this, and all these young cats, all these young dudes pill popping. For me, growing up in the era that I grew up in, it wasn't it was frowned upon to be doing drugs like that, to be taking pills and stuff. Cats would clown you back in the day if you was into stuff like that. But it just shows you how a lot of things have changed. Um, and particularly, a lot of people from the Black community didn't want to deal with anything outside the box of, say, for instance, marijuana or anything like that, because we've seen what the crack era did to our communities. You know what I mean? And we already know, doing your own research, seeing that the CIA was responsible for bringing crack cocaine into the Black community. So a lot of people, especially during my era, my generation, you know, you had songs like Public Enemy that put out, like, talking about crackheads and all that. So even in hip hop, there was a voice where um, people were showing like, yo, we can't have this type of substance abuse in our neighborhood. It's killing the leaders. It's if we even think about the late um, I'm thinking Bobby Seale, and with the no, excuse me, Huey P. Newton from the Black Panther, one of the founders of the Black Panther movement. You know, during his late life, he was a crackhead. So we seen personally what the drugs did to our community. That's why sometimes when I speak to the elders, or sometimes when I speak to people about the benefits of teaching plants and fungi, or the shaman path, or the medicine man path, medicine woman path, um, a lot of people, particularly from the Black community, from the from these communities, man, they don't want to hear it, especially the elders, because they seen what the crack era did to our communities. Um, but again, it's a propaganda machine going on. It's a lot of misinformation going on. So we know there's a big difference out there between what we call real drugs, meth, crack, heroin, all these things. There's a big difference between what we call real drugs and what we call ethogens, you know, which is, the definition of that is, finding, basically uh, generating the divine within, you know. It's a big difference between what we call real, so-called real drugs, and what we call ethogens or psychedelics or teaching plants and fungi. It's a big difference. And the big difference is that when you deal with teaching plants and fungi, or ethogens or psychedelic, these aren't substances, these aren't psychoactive compounds that get you addicted, first and foremost. Mushrooms, you're not going to be an addict with that. Ayahuasca, iboga, these things aren't going to turn someone into a fiend or addict. First of all, if anything, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to free people up of their various addictions. All right, and that could be seen right now through various studies. There's studies now. We're at a renaissance. We're at a beautiful place um, in history right now, because right now you have people, you have medical science, you have people backing up these teaching plants and fungi through various studies to show that it does have medicinal benefits to them, that could restart the brain, reboot the brain, reconnect synapses in the brain, rewire the brain, that it helps with addiction, it helps with anxiety, depression, all kinds of things. So basically, we're talking about the future medicine here, you know. And of course, shamans, medicine men, medicine women been using these psychoactive compounds for thousands, if not millions of years. It's nothing new to indigenous people, but it's very new to the Western world, you know. These Johnny come latelys, especially when we deal with the Western medical establishment, they're way behind on a lot of things. And they're way behind on a lot of things because, particularly if we talk about the pharmaceutical industry, we're talking about $1 billion, what is it, $300 billion a year industry. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to keep people sick. You know, so it's counterproductive to their money making if you have a lot of well, sane, healthy individuals walking around. You know, just wouldn't make sense for them to invest in things, the FDA and all that. It wouldn't make sense for them to invest in things that would make more healthy people around. You know, because if they did, what's the point? I mean, there's no money to be made there. So, my friends, what I'm saying with all that is, I'm saying that look towards your own self for your own healing. Take time to take the steps that you need to do to be able to bring forth your own healing. Because yes, if you have a car accident, yes, if your arm is dislocated or you need surgery, yes, the hospital, they have a place for that, and and they do good work when it comes to those things. But when it comes to self maintenance, when it comes down to keeping yourself healthy so you don't have to end up in those places in the hospital, then that's something that you have to invest in, and do your own research, and learn different plants and herbs and different things that can help you. Um, for instance, I took combo actually. Yeah, I did. I was in a ayahuasca ceremony the other day, and I remember I was dealing with something. It felt like I had a rash, on my arm, you know, and I felt like the only thing I could feel was like something inside my body felt like like the when they say people have the shingles or they feel like there's an itching or something. It was something going on with my body, and I'm a healthy person, and I listened to my body, and I said, but I knew something was going on, and I did the ayahuasca ceremony. I did the combo, and I really want to talk about combo. The benefits of combo is so amazing. It's like some people call it the ancient. Uh, it's the jungle's vaccination. That's the original vaccination there. It's the frog medicine, and you know, from doing that ceremony, I didn't have the little rash on my arm and stuff went away. I didn't feel this type of little itching thing in my body. Just was gone after the ceremony the next day. So it's all these things are beautiful medicine, you know. But I want to go into how these medicines can heal the ills of our society, particularly dealing with prejudice and racism. So hold on one second, my friends. You know what? I'm gonna put a painting for y'all to see when I go get this thing. Let me see here, so y'all can look at something nice. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. My wife painted this picture here, so I'll let y'all look at that. Y'all can study that. I'll be right back. Okay. Hope you can see it. This goddess with her son there, unborn son, in the cosmos. Okay. So I'll be right back. All right. Okay, I'm back, my friends. Okay, I'm back. All right. I want to show y'all my other hobby pipe. This one is used if you want to blow the hoppy on somebody else's nose, you know? So that's one that you could apply for someone else. Okay, let's get this started. Um, the ills of our society. All right. Herbs, healing for the nation. All right. First of all, before I even start with that, this book right here is dope, by the way. This graphic novel, this comic book. I'm definitely a comic book head. Always, it was my cousin Arthur that really put me on to comic books when I was younger. But this is one is called the Eternals. All right, the Eternals, and it's good comic to pick up, and this was written by Jack Kirby actually. And for those who don't know that much about Jack Kirby, he was really the mastermind behind Marvel Comics. Not really Stan Lee. Jack Kirby was the one that really brought in the talent behind the stories, behind the characters, and also he was the brain behind also a lot of the artwork and stuff. Good reference to really look that up and learn more about that. I want y'all to check out Baba Kalindi. That's one of the elders who deals with the teaching plants and fungi as well. And he's actually having a great conference in August. I believe it's August 11th to the 14th, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. You might have to look up the exact dates. But it's called the Detroit Psychedelic Conference. He had me speak there 2 years ago on was it almost 3 years ago, about the subject of urban shamanism, and there was a lot of great people there at that conference. That was the first time I even met brother KT, the arch degree, real intelligent brother KT, and just great minds there, and learning how these teaching plants and these fungi, these psychedelic plants and stuff, how they can really heal our communities, heal the nation, heal the world. And but there's a lot of people within the Black community, Moorish community, what have you, that do not know about these compounds, these psychoactive compounds. And a lot of times, like I said earlier before, with the crack era and all that, there's a lot of people who have a lot of resistance within the Black community in regards to the teaching plants and fungi. And a lot of that resistance comes from a lot of miseducation, truth be told. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of propaganda going around, and there's a lot of people that just don't really know what these teaching plants and fungi are really about and how they work and operate. So that's important. It's a renaissance, and it's I give mad respect to Baba Kalindi Yee, and others on the forefront and behind the scene who are doing their part to educate people of color and just people in general about the benefits of teaching plants and fungi. So it's a great time, and what you're talking about a lot is future medicine. Future medicine. I mean, there's things right now being patterned in behind like I said, the combo, the frog medicine. You know what I mean? What they call it, peptides. They're making pharmaceutical medicine from this frog. They're finding all kinds of benefits from it. So this is ancient medicine, and you're gonna see more and more of this information coming out in the medical industry, in the medical world. At one point in time, I would never think that, like, for instance, Reiki or pranic healing or any of these things, or acupuncture, for instance, that would be actually in the hospitals. You know, you're having more and more hospitals actually embrace these ancient forms of healing. They have people doing Reiki now, and with people who are recovering from surgery. They have people doing Reiki on people before they even go into surgery, you know, so they can lessen their anxiety or their nervousness. Because one of the benefits of Reiki is that it definitely brings a sense of calmness over a person, or a level of serenity. So, and Reiki has many benefits. We could do another video on Reiki another time. So I'm a Reiki master myself in many different traditions. Shambhala, multidimensional Reiki, you know, Usui Reiki, Kundalini Reiki, pranic healing, different things, rising star healing system. So I've been studying, looking at different forms of how this energy, this pranic healing, or this prana, or this chi, or this ki, how all this life force energy, how the benefits of it, how it works. And I've been doing that over 10 years, you know. I think it's about 13 years now since I got introduced to Reiki. And it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. I use it every day. That's usually the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, even before I step out to bed, is I do some Reiki on myself. I go over my 7 chakras before I even start my day. So, and you'll see, let me just put this right here for a second. You'll see how it actually sets the vibration up for the day. You know what I mean? When you do things like that, things go a little smoother, believe it or not. All right. So, Reiki, check it out, my friends. But Jack Kirby, I first started to learn even more about him when I heard some of Baba Kalindi's shows. No, actually, I was on Brother Ank's show. Excuse me, Brother Hank, or Hank Rising Sun. Good brother. I have a couple of organite pieces that I bought from Brother Hank, and Hank ain't no joke. You know what I mean? When it comes to making some deep organite pieces. You know, last time I was chilling with the elder, I was in Brooklyn, and we was chilling out, and he had me test some of his organite pieces there. You know, because I was in a very shamanic place that day when I came to see him, and very lucid, and so he could tell I was very open, so he just started asking me questions about certain pieces he was making, and if there was anything that I could add on to from my own personal insight, if there was anything I could add on to help with the pieces. And intuitively, I never really did this before. Intuitively, I was just letting my intuition come through. And at that point, you know, I was like, you know, put another copper wire here. The spirit of that organite piece is telling me you should put this other stone here. And it was interesting because I never, you know, I know I'm very, you know, I could be very psychic at many times, but, you know, I don't put myself with these titles that I'm a reader or this. I don't even like to use Reiki Master, to tell you the truth. Because I think when you start to put Master behind your name or anything, First of all, sometimes it could boost up your ego. And when you deal with the mystic traditions, one big part of the tradition is to really get a hold of your ego. So I had a lot of when I in the early 2000s when I was building with some of the old lamas, Tibetan lamas and stuff. I remember I used to hear from a lot of them that they didn't like to get praised, not at all, man. They, it's funny over here in the West, people love compliments. They love to get their ego stroked. I'm the shit. And guess what? There's healthy compliments, and I think having good self-esteem is important, especially for people of color. When you talk about young black girls, young black boys, and when we think of body images, when we think of what it means to look cool or what it means to look pretty and all that stuff, as you know, when you look at the media, it's people, it's very misrepresented. You could just go outside and go into your local supermarket, right? And you'll see all the different magazines. You'll see the fashion magazines, this type of magazines. And if you go around here in America, at least, it's nothing but just white faces. A lot of just, and this is what this video is about. Dealing. How do we deal with what we call white supremacy, or how do we deal with racism and all that in regard to as a tool with using teaching plants and fungi? How do we approach that? So when we look at that, I know there might be some viewers out there, and everything is perspective, right? So there might be some people out there, particularly some Europeans, that might never thought about this. What I mean? Because this is just their world where they're represented. So they turn on the TV, and it's easy to find a white superhero. It's very easy to find a great hero, right? Within popular media, they're very well represented, Europeans, right? But when you see how many people of color, how many Chinese people, how many Latina people do you see on major newscast stations, on NBC, ABC, all these different things? How many people of color do we see in the various magazines that we go to the supermarket and shop at different places? How many do we see being represented? Do we see more Native Americans in popular media? Do we see more Asians, different things? And we don't. It's very misrepresented, and I think things are changing. Because I think things, if there's any truth in this reality, it's the reality of change. All right, change is always happening at every moment, every second. So nothing stays the same. Empires rise and they fall. And so everyone has their own time to shine, if we want to say that. All right, but in regard to the ego, a lot of the elders, when I was especially dealing with the Tibetan Buddhism at the time, they didn't like to get praised. They did not like to get praised. And they seen praise as actually a hindrance to their own spiritual development. Believe it or not, because they were trying to eradicate the ego rather than pump it up. All right. That's why they would always say, don't praise me. Don't praise me. Don't do that. No, I'm not master this and I'm not master that. I'm just a humble servant of the Most High, of the All. you know, trying to connect with my true identity again. That's what they was on, you know? That's why when you even deal with certain teaching plants and fungi that even deal with that level, with the eradication of the ego, is deep. It becomes very deep. Things like 5-MeO DMT, for instance. Give thanks to Bob Marley and them. Now, my friends, let me continue. Like 5-MeO DMT, for instance, right? 5-MeO DMT eradicates the ego. A lot of people that are on that type of journey, or journeys like Iboga or different things that really dissolve the ego, dissolves the identity. A lot of people have a hard time on those type of journeys, very hard time, because they're so attached. They're so attached to the physical. They're so attached to a level of thinking this is them, you know? Like me right here talking to you right now. Some people can perceive a very limited way of looking at me and think this is just this man of color here, you know, this melanated brother, you know. He looks, maybe he's this old. He says his name is this, you know, and this, and then it has this whole list of different things of perceiving a person, or even perceiving yourself, and then feeling this is the grand identity of you. That's why when you deal with things like 5-MeO DMT, or things that dissolve the ego or have what they call the ego death, a lot of people that take these type of things, especially if they're not ready to learn what it means to embrace the all, or go back home. If they're not ready for that, you see people scream, shout, like fighting tooth and nail to try to hold on to the physical. You know what I mean? To try to hold on to the so-called identity. That's why when you deal with the mystic tradition, or when you deal with, for instance, some of our indigenous ancestors, which are just you anyway, but when you deal with some of your indigenous ancestors, and they were masters of death. I remember being a little boy, my father taking me to the art museum. I remember having a big fascination with the Egyptian or Kemetic or Timerian display section of the museum there. I remember some fruit. Had some fruit in the morning. Fruit and tea. We eat too much. We're a very obese nation. And we eat too much because we're not getting the nutrients, the vitamins, the enzymes. We're not getting the things that we need in our body. And our body is starving. We're eating, but we're not. And we seem like we eat, and then we say, wow, you know, but still I'm not satisfied. And you keep eating and eating because your body is trying to send you messages to tell you that you're not getting what you need. And it's hard because we live in this age of Kali Yuga, where there's fake food and GMOs and stuff. Go back to the plants, go back to farming, urban farming movements, you know? But like I was saying, when a person ain't ready for the death process, the ego death, they fight tooth and nail because they have been conditioned to think that's them. This is me. You know, when you read about a lot of these ancient masters, these yogis, these yoginis, these sages, these mystics, and when they talk about they having their enlightening experience, they usually talk a lot about the great merging, where they have the ego death. The butterfly that just flew by me. I'm the cloud that's here. I'm the wind. You know, it was that book called I remember it was called, what is it called, the Alchemist, the book of Alchemist. Good book. I remember I read the graphic novel version of it because again I love comics. And I was like, wow, this is dope. This is a dope story and it's a dope artwork. You know. But there was a moment towards the end of the book. I won't give no spoilers to anybody who never read the book or whatever. But this character merges with the wind. You know what I mean? He was able to make that connection, you know? And we have all these things in us. We have all the elements in us. We have space dust in us. So we got to understand that we're part of the all, and the all is part of us. We could know that on an intellectual scale. We could read about these things. We can ponder about them. But having self-realization is a different story. Having your own actual experience is a different story. Very different. So the ego death is funny, it's deep. And a lot of mystics would say like, yo, don't praise me. Matter of fact, I have no title because that's just going to inflate my ego. You know, that's just going to bring me a place of distraction where I don't need that. Respect, yes, respect. I understand respect. Like, hey, respect your elders. Hey, respect your teachers. Respect, yes. But worshiping, putting someone on a pedestal, putting someone at a place holier than thou, the mystics would say, no, don't put me there. Because I'm not here to save you. This is what these mystics would say. I'm not here to save you. You're here to save yourself. You're here to do the work yourself. Because if I do the work for you, how can you appreciate your own graduation? That's like someone cheating on the test. Gave you all the answers, and then when it came to graduation, you got the diploma or whatever. Do you really feel good about that accomplishment? I don't know. Maybe you might have something nagging at you later and saying, wow, you know, I didn't really deserve this graduation or diploma or whatever. And that's the same thing even on spiritual evolution. Gurus, teachers, different things, they're there to inspire you. They're there to maybe give you insight in certain things. But they're not there to like save you or to bring you to some other place. You know, that's not their job. And furthermore, you're putting too much on a person when you do that. Because when you put someone on a pedestal and they don't fit all your requirements, or they don't come up to your standing, you know, what happens is what? I'll tell you what happens. They fall off of that pedestal Now you demonize them because they didn't meet your expectations. Now you're going to say, oh, how did they get caught up in that? And I can't believe they did this and that. No, you're judging them now. All right. And you put them at a place where you felt they was untouchable. Listen, everyone, even gurus, everyone, they have all their lessons, different lessons to learn, an evolution to go through. Everyone's learning. There might be some people that might be on so-called higher levels or so-called lower levels, but we're all learning. You know? They're not there to save you. You're there to save your own self. You know, even my fellow brother, Christian brothers and sisters, you know, and that they bring, deem as important in their religion, Jesus Christ, Yahshua, what have you. Excuse me. In their books, they say, he's quoted as saying, you know, you're gonna do things greater than me. You know, and I think people, I'm not stepping on anyone's toes, but I'm just giving people a reminder. I think people forget about quotes like that from their own religious doctrines and things like that. They forget about how this path is about doing the work. This path is about doing the work. It's about really taking time to develop your inner self, thus having an effect on your outer self and outer surroundings. It's about you, not about anyone else. You know, and that's why I think that's why it was quoted. You know, that's why it was quoted by Yahshua saying, hey, you're going to do greater things. Oh, you think I'm ill? You think I could do some things? Let's look at the future generations and see what they're going to be capable of doing. You know, because we can't forget that there's a lot of things that we just haven't tapped into, you know? Look at that book. Check the book out, The Super Psychics. I think it's called The Super Psychics of China. It's a very interesting book. I think it's out of print. So you have to go on eBay or Amazon or wherever to find it. And it's unfortunate because they got people charging an arm and leg for that book. Because I think it was originally $11.95 or something like that. And you could get that book sometimes $150. But I found a copy which was almost about 80. And it's talking about real life documented cases of people with psychic powers, you know. And what's so interesting, they got a couple of people in that book that they documented who works very close with the Chinese government, you know. And they was talking in the book how in China, their public school systems are geared into developing children to develop these psychic abilities, to develop going beyond their five senses. And when they see children who are very advanced in that area, they hire them in the government. They utilize them for their own means. It sounds like Shield from Marvel to me, you know. And just like I was saying with Jack Kirby, he had military ties. And if you go on, like I was saying, Brother Hank's show, what is it, Crystals, Pyramids, and Magnets on Blog Talk Radio, you'll see there's a show where Hank has this guy on his show. I think it's Hank's show or Barbara Clinton's show. Check both of their shows out on Blog Talk. And they have this guy on there who's real expert in comic books, and he talks about Jack Kirby and his military connections, and how there were things that were secret military programs, black ops, certain things that weren't actually inform to the public these military programs that Jack Kirby learned about. He put them in comics, because you have some people, believe it or not, you do have some very good-hearted people that are in places of government, that are in places in the entertainment industry, and from their limited place of power or wherever they stand, they try their best to be able to subliminally, in many ways, to inform the public of what's going on with a lot of these things that's going down. And in the case of Jack Kirby, he talked about what we call the super soldier program. The super soldier program, and the manipulations of genetics and stuff like that. You know, right now, I seen this is out. This is public knowledge. They have something out now called designer babies, where you can literally. This is crazy. This is the time when, you know, where you literally can design your baby. You can tell you can have your baby to be able to have this eye color, this hair, whatever, and this is what's going on. But as you will understand, my friends, everything goes in cycles. There's literally nothing new under the sun. All right. And this goes back to the star people, the star elders that knew a lot, that were very high scientists that came into the level of mastering genetics, splicing, cloning, all these things. And this goes into galactic history, and I know some people, when it comes to that type of subject, it's way over people's head. And some people don't want to really hear about it. Some people say, oh, that's pseudoscience or whatever. But there's something that we all have to look into. If you're open-minded, I think you should look into it, because the whole story has not been told. The whole story has not been told, and that's why you should look into it. As everything goes in one big cycle, we understand that, like, they have designer babies out now, and it's funny, if you look at I forget what Superman movie it was, but it was a Superman movie where they shown that all the babies in that future from Superman's planet, that they were all grafted babies, that and it was interesting. Superman, he was born through the old way of making babies, making love, so they show it in this media, and it's very interesting, because you look at the time we live in, and you say to yourself, wow, these are things that I might have seen in the comic books or a movie or whatever, and this is happening in real time, real space right now, where you have something called designer babies, And in regard to Jack Kirby, the real mastermind behind Marvel, it like with Baba Kalini, when he was building with his brother on his show, he was saying, yes, Jack Kirby definitely had some military ties, definitely had some military connections, and different things, like, for instance, Captain America, for instance, we're all talking about super soldier programs. You know what I mean? The advanced soldier, dealing with genetics. How can we make a more aggressive soldier? How can we make a more stronger, faster soldier? And the playing of genetics, and how that ties into even the mixing these soldiers with even animal DNA, putting in a little cheetah, putting in this one and that one too. So you're not looking at certain people that aren't, quote unquote, fully human, walking around you thinking that you might be looking at a human or what have you, and that might not be the case, especially on a genetic level. So this is very interesting. What goes around comes around. Nothing new under the sun, and that relates to even racism, prejudice, and all that, and how we can deal with this, like I said, from the level of dealing with teaching plants and fungi. All right. Now, I kind of went off subject because I was talking about going beyond our five senses. And there might be some people out there that might not be aware of that we do have more than five senses. There might be some people out there might not believe any of this that I'm talking about and saying, like, again, this is pseudoscience. This is that spiritual, metaphysical, occult stuff. I don't know what this brother's talking about. But what goes around comes around. And we're at an age where, some people would call this the Kali Yuga age, especially in the Hindu context. But we're in an age where things are changing rapidly. We always know what's going on with technology, but there's things changing in nature as well. The sun, look towards that sun for a lot of changes that will happen on this planet, particularly to us, our own genetic DNA change, and how these solar flares and different frequencies of the sun, how that's changing people. You know what I mean? We're going to have a lot of mutants. If we want to talk about X-Men, we're going to have a lot of mutants walking around. And the so-called powers that be, they're shaking in their boots. Because what happens to a nation of slaves that all of a sudden start to have the upgrade? They're unmanageable. They can't control them anymore. That's the big scary thing, for them. Because you have a lot of secret societies that are built and geared on control and resonate purely just from three chakras, dealing with survival, dealing with sexuality, and dealing with power. That's all they try to have us. That's where they operate from. And that's where they want the rest of us, everybody else, to operate from. What's going to be interesting is that when you look at the so-called powers that be, when you look at these so-called secret societies, and you see how they're utilizing the ancient metaphysical knowledge and using that to manipulate rather than to build, you're going to see how interesting this all falls out when people start to get the upgrade. Because like I said in that book, The Super Psychics of China, you have these people that they hire, just like SHIELD, when they see, and they handpick these individuals because of the powers or the abilities that they have. In Hinduism, they would call these abilities siddhis, SIDDHI. And they say these are abilities that human beings can gain through inner awareness and inner development, self-realization. They say through the practice of meditation, people can have the siddhi, for instance, to walk through physical matter. They can have the siddhi, for instance, of levitation. They can have the siddhi of being able to be, or the power siddhi or power to be in various locations at one time. Now, and for some people, this might be way over their head, and that's fine. That's fine. That's completely fine. Everybody gets certain things at their own time. And this will go on forever, my friend. This is infinite. So you're not missing anything. You're going to have your turn. But what's interesting is there's cases. We're seeing more and more cases of people that have those type of abilities. For instance, there's a book, right? There's a book called Faces in the Smoke. Faces in the Smoke. It's by this author. I forget his name at the time. Excuse me for forgetting his name. But it was this European dude that grew up in Africa, right? I think he grew up in South Africa. And as a boy, he's seen a lot of supernatural things from a lot of indigenous people, a lot of Africans there that were doing ritual. And him coming from his own culture that was, or his own family that was very analytical, very logical, very left brain, he could not understand what he was seeing as a boy. And it opened up a big box of curiosity for him, you know, and allowed him to, even as he got older as an adult, to look into these type of phenomena. And it got him onto a lifelong quest to seek out healers, to see what healing and this supernatural stuff, what it was really all about. He's a filmmaker too. I seen one of his documentaries where he had one of the healers that he talks about in his book. He shows it on the film where the guy literally could read someone's body and know where illness or disease is at. Read it, it would have a certain vibration or frequency of disease. And he would feel the area, just like we do in Reiki. Like I was saying, I do Reiki as well and different other things. You'll feel that even when you're doing a healing on someone. You might, you can scan the person's auric field. And as you scan the person's auric field, you can feel certain sensation in your hand. Sometimes you might go over part of the person's body, and you might feel a heat sensation, or you might even feel a cool sensation. These are all type of different indicators or different things trying to tell you this is the area you need to work on, or keep your hand there at that particular part of the body, because that's going to release maybe some emotional baggage, or maybe that's going to release some negative type of energy, or this might actually open up a meridian pathway or a blocked chakra. So this is the same type of principle, but this guy, he took it even further. He would go feel certain areas, and he literally, you could see on camera where he literally rubs in a certain way where he would be able to go pierce the skin, go into the body, and pull out the illness, pull out the particular disease. When you see on the film, you could see where it's getting the skin was getting reddish when he was rubbing it, and then all of a sudden you see a little bit of blood coming out. He pulls, you could see him pull out some black type of substance, gooey type of substance. He in a cup or whatever, and then he rubs it on the area again. And then as he's rubbing it again, the skin comes back to normal, like it's nothing. What could you type the name of the comic book guy? I don't have good speakers. Okay, yes. I'm kind of new to this thing here, so you have to bear with me. I don't when it comes to the technology, I don't even see the option to type on here with this thing. But his name is Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby, 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 Jack Kirby. All right. That's the name of the guy that you want to check out. But what I was saying with this healer, he would rub on it, and it would be no scar, nothing. And he talks about this particular healer in this Asian man in the book, Faces in the Smoke. And then there's another chapter in the book where he talks about this secret society of flying men. The secret society of flying men in Haiti. And that chapter on Haiti was just crazy itself in the book. So I'll let and it's crazy in the book, the guy that he meets, that he tries to convince this Haitian man, who he goes by the nickname Saint Germain, which Saint Germain is an interesting figure to check out and study too. Hold on, there's Faces in the Smoke. Yes, That's the name of the book. Yep. Um, but thank you for answering, by the way. Hey, no problem. No problem, my friend. Um, but I was saying that this guy that goes by the name nickname Saint Germain, which he's talked about in the book. This the guy who writes the book, this European fella, he tries to convince this guy Saint Germain to take him to the actual meeting of the secret society of flying men. He gets there, and some of the people that were there were really pissed off at this guy that they called Saint Germain, and was telling him like, yo, the rules, you don't supposed to be just bringing in anybody here that's not initiated into this. So there was this Haitian police officer. There was these police officers that were there too, that I guess were part of this society, and they was about to kill this dude. He had to run for his life. He talks about this in the book, and but he links up with this guy Saint Germain again, and they're at the hotel talking. And long story short, this dude shows the writer one of his other abilities, which is to walk through solid objects. He walked through the wall. So he was in the room, he ran through the wall, and the writer talks about how he went outside. He opened the hotel door and went out in the hallway and seeing this guy, Saint Germain, leaning on the wall in the hallway. So this stuff is known, and it's very well known among secret societies, um, initiates, you know what I mean? And these things are passed down from mouth to ear. And it's usually passed down to like, this doesn't be spoken in public or spoken to the masses. This is spoken amongst small circles of people who find capabilities within themselves, in the case of supernatural powers or psychic powers or cities. Again, you have the opposite spectrum, the opposite end, where you have other secret societies that are geared on driven by power, or driven by those soul three chakras. And these individuals are about power and about manipulating the world. They look at the rest of the people out here as autumn feeders, as the sheeple, and they're there to hold on to the sacred knowledge, but they're using it for disagreeable reasons, and you could see that in people like, even historically, like figures like Hitler. Hitler was very into the occult, very into metaphysics. His whole symbol, the swastika, was a very sacred symbol amongst Native American peoples and Buddhist and Hindu peoples. But you could see how he would use certain sacred teachings and flip it and use it for his own benefit, Third Reich and all that. But you see, Hitler was always sending the Third Reich, the Nazis, to Tibet, because they knew the Tibetans over there in the Himalayan mountains, they were one of the last secluded places, because it was high in the mountains, where it was able to preserve some of these ancient mystical teachings. That's why you have that's why they are very known for holding the rainbow body technique, meaning turning your body into light at the time of your so-called death. They was also very known for the tumo exercise, turning their body into heat, heating up their body. And they was very also known for the fast running technique, to be able to run over big hilltops and different things, running like you see on the Star Wars movie, running like the speed, super fast. I had a lama that told me about that particular technique one day, This is over 10, about 13, 14 years ago. And his name is Garchin Rinpoche. Very good, very good person. Very good person. He's in that movie, I believe, Himalayan Masters, or it might be the Tibetan Yogis or something like that. But you'll see him talking about the Tumo technique in that video, and it's funny because even in that video, they talk in the beginning of the video. They said we've never publicly displayed these teachings before. But because we live in a time where things are so messed up, basically, we're so crazy, and a lot of the ancient masters are dying, they don't want these ancient teachings to go to waste, to be lost, which we know nothing's never lost. Go into the Akashic records, is all there. But for those who might not be attuned to that and don't have living teachers around, they want to make sure it's still preserved. And so he's on there talking about the ancient Tumo technique of heating the body. And I remember I was building with Garchin Rinpoche one day. And that it was like some initiation type of thing I was going to, meditation thing. And I remember he doesn't speak really English like that, no. But he had his interpreter there that day, and he was telling me about the fast runner technique that they hold. And he says they put magical mantras on their feet, that they write these particular magical formulas on their feet, and they activate it in certain ways, be it through the breath or what have you, and they're able to run super fast. It's very interesting how different people around the world still have the memory and still hold on to the traditions that teach people how to go beyond their five senses, you know? So when we think of nature, when we think of the sun, there's a lot of things changing, and more. Don't be surprised if you see more and more people have these abilities popping off, you know? I have a friend of mine, I tell her a lot, she had a levitation experience, this friend of mine. And she was running super fast one day in the park, early in the morning before people was really up. And she was running, and she says, Dooley, she said, I levitated off the ground for a couple of seconds. She said, I didn't go so high, but it was like, she was in shock. She was in shock. She was scared out of her mind at that moment, which is normal for most of us here, in this Western world, or places that are secluded from this type of information. She was scared, and I understand why. Because when you have an experience like this and no one's here to tell you that you can do these things, it's out of your everyday ordinary reality. And thus, it's like, yo, what the fuck was that? You know what I mean? So at that point, if a person doesn't know what's going on, or can't talk to anyone about it, or have anyone explain what's going on, they could think they're literally going crazy. And that happens a lot. There's a lot of people in the mental institution that are in the mental wards that have awoken, that actually had spontaneous Kundalini arisings. Had spontaneous Kundalini arising. You know what I mean? Overnight. And because everything opened up overnight, or all of a sudden, and maybe they come from a background or a family where they don't know anything about these type of subjects or things, they literally could think they're going crazy. And sometimes they think they have gone crazy, when literally they have just had an awakening experience. It's deep. I'll never forget one day when I was leaving work, and I was leaving this place. I used to work at this spot, at this cafe type of area, and I was working the register. And I remember this so many years ago, And I remember I was leaving the job spot, and I walked down the stairs out the spot, and I felt this. On cloud nine. I was on cloud 99 for about almost 2 to 3 hours. I didn't know what stimulated. I don't know what happened. I just know it was super intense and it was amazing. So these things happen to people. And sometimes when they happen to people, they don't know what the hell just happened. If anyone, there's no one there to explain to them what happened or what's going on. So a lot of people that awaken sometimes are caught in the mental ward, and are now heavily sedated and medicated because they had an awakening, you know? I remember even in the book, The Autobiography of the Yogi, or Yogananda, they talk about the different people with different psychic abilities in that book, certain cities in that book. And I remember in that book, there was one person they talked about that could be in various locations at one time. And I remember in that book, The Autobiography of Yogi, and by the way, you could see there's a documentary on his life on Netflix too right now. But in that book, he talked about how it was one guy that seen this meditation master in town. He was at the market or whatever, and he's seen him. He just wave to him or whatever, say, hey, what up, and what happened was that he got back to the temple or whatever, and when he got back to the temple, he seen him walking in the temple. So he went to this other master. He's like, this is strange. I just seen Master so and so in the market, and all of a sudden I see him over here or whatever. And the other teacher said, "Well, did you touch him when he was at the market?" He says, "No." Well, he said that's his duplicate. He sent out his duplicate. Basically, he said he sent out like a hologram version of himself on a spiritual level. So again, there's a lot of stuff to us that we're not aware of. I had a friend of mine, and I'm gonna go into what I really want to talk to. I'm just giving people examples out there, because sometimes we're so conditioned under such mind control that sometimes you have to give so many references, give so many things, experiences to get a sense, to realize to people that this stuff is real. You know what I mean? So I have a good friend of mine. We've been friends for years, and I remember that he told me, he said, "Dooley, you won't believe this, yo." He says they was driving. I forget what area we was driving. It was somewhere, I think, in Boston at the time. Excuse me. May get the story right. He said they was driving on the highway somewhere. I'm not sure where they was going, all that, but they was driving on a highway. They seen this man. This seemed to look like this Native American looking man. He had the whole attire on. He had the feathers, everything, and they was riding by him, and he was standing near the highway or something. I'm not sure if I got this right. I'm not sure if it was the highway. Car, and they was on some real ignorant shit at that moment. It was like saying, "Oh, look at that Indian dude." It's like, "Woo," being ignorant. So next thing I know, He says they drove and they was near the city, and they said they seen that same man standing on this corner where they was about to hit and make a turn, left turn. And everybody in that car that seen him standing when they was in the city, it was like, no fucking way. How the fuck did that happen? Like, he was just there on the highway. You know what I mean? How the hell did he just like stand here in the city like we was driving mad fast? Well, how the hell did that happen? And again, a level of bilocation. So there's a lot of things to us that we just aren't aware of, that we just don't know about ourselves. And a lot of it is intentionally. You have to understand a lot of it's by design too, my friends. The fake food, the chemtrails, all the different type of things, you know what I mean, to dumb down a nation, you know, the low vibrational music, all these different things, you know. But you have to understand that it's all part of the one as well too. Like I said earlier, the big stage, everyone is playing their part. And believe it or not, a lot of the mystics would say the age of Kali, or the Iron Age, because it's the age of strife, discord, confusion. This is the age where you have more avatars actually born. This is the age where you have more people actually become enlightened, rather than the earlier ages, like the golden age or the silver age, where everything is all beautiful. You know what I mean? Where people's natural cities or powers are prevalent, where everyone can communicate telepathically, where everyone can bilocate and do these things. At that point, third dimension in the golden age seemed like heaven on earth. So therefore, there's not a sense of evolution during those times. There's really no time for people really having a yearning to go in, because everything is perfect, right? They say the age of Kali, or the Iron Age, is really where you see more masters, because the time is so crazy. It can't help but people ask and question things and try to find solutions or try to evolve. So I find that interesting. But 1 second, my family. I'm about to do some more Rapi right here. Again, Rapi is sacred shaman snuff medicine, natural herbs, and tobacco. Tobacco is a very masculine medicine. You know what I mean? When we deal with pure tobacco, not these Marlboro Lights or daggone Newports or any of these things, you know what I mean, sprayed with chemicals and stuff, but the energy behind the sacred tobacco was always used in ceremony, and it was always used in a level of healing. In the case of Rapi, a Hapi, it is used to clear the auric field, is used to be able to align the chakras and the meridians, all those things. All right. So this is my sacred Rapi pipe. And the Rapi also gets the mucus out of the body. It gets the mucus and it clears the lungs, gets the phlegm up, all that. People start spitting and hacking and sneezing, clears it out. So yep. So I put a little Rapi on my hand here, and I put it in my little personal Rapi pipe. And you have Rapi that you could use on a personal pipe with yourself. And as you can see, my eyes got a little more watered and stuff, working through the system. Or you can use a Rapi, the long Rapi pipe. This is a long Rapi pipe, which I blow, ceremony, I blow in people's nostril. You see? Rapi is legal. You can, it's not illegal. You can be able to use it for your own benefit. And this is used in many times with ayahuasca. It has that perfect blend of yin and yang. Ayahuasca being more feminine and Rapi being masculine, you see? So got that perfect yin and yang type of combination. Same thing for those who smoke weed or marijuana. If you're doing ritual with weed and Rapi, that's another perfect combination. Again, herb or weed is a very, Mary Jane, she's a very feminine plant. And Rapi, it's masculine, so it's a perfect balance there. So I put some Rapi in this on the other one, I'll blow in this. Again, it clears the nostrils, gets mucus and things out. But let me go into ceremony. I know I was talking about a lot of different things, and I know my children are going to be waking up soon. My wife, start my day. You know, I try to do this early just to share with people, you know. I think sharing, as we learn in elementary school and different things, sharing is caring. It is, you know, each one teach one, you know. If I know a little something, share. You know, you could use this internet in a way to uplift each other, you know, use the technology to lift up each other and teach each other, you know. But sacred ceremony, you know, I was at a ayahuasca ceremony the other day, and it was a beautiful ceremony. It was very beautiful. It was geared to Okoshi. Okay, and the thing is that when we look at different archetypes, you know, archetypical energies, right? It was the energy dealing with the hunter, you know, and it's funny, it was dealing with the hunter and Koshi and also, you know, if you look at some of the medicine we was using that day, we was using combo frog medicine. We using the hockey, which I did right there, and Sananga eye medicine. A lot of these things were used by these were very warrior type of medicine. Have more stamina, more energy. So we were going hunter energy and being able to therefore in a symbolic way embrace the energy of the hunt, to embrace the energy of the hunting your goals, manifesting the things in your life much more easier. Okay, but ayahuasca is a deep medicine, and it deals with a lot of purging. You know, part of ayahuasca ceremony is part of it is throwing up, being able to let go emotional things, psychological things, being able to let go of even physical illnesses and different things. So there's a lot of purging in dealing with this medicine. Same thing with combo as well, frog medicine, a lot of purging. Um, what's interesting, when I started really trying to bring people together for ceremony in my community, um, I seen that it was something very well needed, you know, very needed, you know. It's needed for the world, but each community, each tribe has its own trauma, has its own pain, you know, has its own thing that they have to deal with collectively, tribally, nationwide, worldwide. We all, there's different levels to trauma. And when I think of healing, and I think of the healing that Black folk indigenous Moors people have to deal with here in America and abroad. There's a lot of different things we need to deal with. And we deal with also epic genetics. We deal with ancestral memory, you know? So there's a lot of things in our DNA, a lot of trauma, not only from your own individual self, but also from your family. That's where sometimes you hear things like family curses and things like that, generational curses. Sometimes you hear things about that. You hear about, we can think about ancestral memory. Sometimes you might have, through studying epigenetics, it's been proven that a person can have traumatic memories and experiences pop up in their psyche or their memory, collective memory bank, and that cannot even, and you might have an experience or feeling come through you, and you might not know where that comes from. That experience could be an epigenetic experience where you're experiencing some emotional, psychological trauma from an ancestor or from ancestors way back. It was a sister I'll never forget. Her name is, I forget the sister's name, but she was part of the Beatweed tradition in the Gabon, and they deal with the sacred medicine called the Iboga, or also known as Ibogaine. And actually, right now, Ibogaine is really being studied in the medical establishments because it has a big success with addiction. There's a lot of people that use Ibogaine or Iboga who have been addicts for years. Crackheads, meth heads, coke heads, you name it. The people that have been battling with, you know, dealing with, cigarette addiction, all kind of stuff. And people deal with the Iboga and they're able to cure their addiction. You know what I mean? They're able to literally cure their addiction, you know? They're able to cure their addiction, and with a 90, it's about 90% success rate with no withdrawal symptoms at all. Okay. And a lot of self. The concept of soul retrieval is that people go through trauma, all right? Go through a traumatic experience. And the concept is that the premises behind this is that when a person goes through trauma, bits and pieces of their spirit is broken off from them. So for instance, a horrific act like rape, for instance, where a child might be molested, because that experience is so horrific, and because the part of you, the way the all creator would create, the ingenious behind creation is that when you say, for instance, if a person's going through something traumatic, there's a part of them that leaves the body because they don't want to be able to feel the effects of that pain or that horrific act or whatever, or experience fully. They shown that in that movie, which I don't like the movie because, it was just a lot of negative imagery and all that. But I seen the movie, was called Precious, that movie Precious. And the character, the lady, young sister in the movie, when it shows that she's being molested, it shows that she takes her consciousness into a reality. All right. That's the same premise when it goes to soul retrieval. When there's part of you that leaves that 2 year old, 3 year old, 5 year old, whatever, whenever a heinous act, like for instance, rape might have happened, that heinous act that happens, that part of you that's been violated, that part of your psyche, that's part of your spirit is broken off and left your body for its own protection. All right. So when you go into ceremony and have the soul retrieval experience, you travel. You literally do a level of time travel, and you're able to embrace that 5 year old or 6 year old, whatever, and you'll see that part of you that it has been left behind. And you say, okay, now it's time to come back home. Now we can become whole again. You're safe. You're okay. Um, that's kind of the same premises. That's kind of the same thing that happens with the medicine iboga. They call it the time travel plan. The time travel plan, where you're able to open up or alternate reality or parallel reality where you can go back in time to that party where you first sniffed or you first shot up the needle or whatever, and go back in that time and have a different scenario go down. So you can now go back in time and say, hey, you know what? Matter of fact, you know what? I don't want, man, it's all right, man. I'll just take a beer. I'll drink a beer, man. I won't sniff that. I'm good, you know? And when a person comes back from that experience, they literally, that's why they're able to kick addiction like that with such a success rate. So I hear my son in another room. Um, so I don't know how long I might have to have on this video, but I'm going to continue for a second. But yeah, so, when I think of different communities, when I think of, for instance, Black folk, certain thing, indigenous folk, Moors, when I think of the certain trauma that, of say, for instance, the transatlantic slave trade, for instance, or dealing with just the whole level of slavery and how that affected people, how it affected Black folk, and how those memories are still within our DNA, within our epigenetic DNA, our memory bank. Um, these things can help heal generational curses. These plants and fungi can help actually repair trauma. The sister that I was saying was part of the Betwee tradition. She had an iboga experience where she tapped into a memory where she seen these melanated brothers and sisters running through this sugar cane field trying to escape slavery during that time. And what was deep is like she didn't really know if it was actually a past life experience with her or if she was just experiencing the memory of some of her ancestors. But that just allowed it. First of all, I was so grateful for her to share that experience with me. But also, it highlighted the fact that there's a lot of things going on within our psyche, within our unconscious mind, our subconscious mind, with even parts of our spirits that we have to repair, that we have to heal. So when I look at the teaching plants and the fungi, when I look at the shaman path or the medicine man path, medicine woman path, I look at it as an opportunity for some deep healing. You know, um, a lot of people say one, for instance, journey with ayahuasca or maybe a journey with psilocybin mushroom, doing a sacred journey for about 8 to 9 hours can repair and do healing that might have tried to do healing that might have normally taken a person maybe 10 years to accomplish. You know, someone sitting down with a psychotherapist, for instance, and trying to work through their problems, and having this person talk to the psychologist might say, for that scenario, right? Doing psychotherapy, which might take, a person might have some childhood issues or some type of trauma, and doing some psychotherapy work might take that person maybe 8, 10 years to really get at the root of their problem or their issue, or to heal certain things. Somebody that might take a decade to heal something that could take a person one journey to heal, in the case of the teaching plant and the fungi. Because these teaching plants and fungi, they're ancient. Fungi spores or mushroom spores can travel on asteroids. So many people theory that mushroom seeds travel from planet to planet to enlighten different species, because I really believe that, I don't believe, I know that we're not alone, and if you look into, again, like galactic history and things of that nature, you'll see there's a rich tradition where you have many indigenous people that talk about the star nations. Depiction of our solar system, of the rings around Saturn, of them being aware of Sirius B, all these things, way before the so-called invention of the telescope. And when NASA and other people came across their information, that they were baffled, because they look at these so-called primitive indigenous people as backwards. They, when we look at modern day science, technology and stuff, people look at modern day societies as the top of evolution. But when you do more research, you realize there's been many cycles of even high technology. We could look into Atlantis, we can look into Lemuria, you can look into the ancient Vedic teachings and hear about the flying crafts of, and all these type of things of nuclear war and stuff. Again, everything goes in cycles, But the Dogon knew how to use the teaching plant of the fungi. Like I said, there's certain plants and there's certain medicine that can increase your vision, that can increase the level of your hearing, that can do all kinds of, can amplify and magnify things. So your ancient African ancestors knew about certain fungi that would literally be able to increase their vision, to be able to see in far space, to see certain constellations, different things. It's very deep. To travel to those places through the assistance of these fungi and teaching plants, to literally have astral projections and different things, and remote viewing and stuff. I remember I had an experience with the fungi where I had a level of remote viewing, and I don't know what planet I was on. I don't know, not that I was on, I don't know where my remote viewing or my consciousness went to. But it went to a different planet where this planet was, you're dealing with intelligent life, and they were dealing with beings on that planet that looked like humans, but they had a totally different skin tone. And on that planet they had purple skin. And I seen, it was like clear as day, it was very lucid, and it was a woman who was sitting at a table. It looks like something that looked like a cafe Hey, love. Dude. Hey, love. Oh, hold on. Hey, love. I'm on Facebook Live. I'm not live, but YouTube Live. I'm almost done. How you doing, love? You're looking beautiful. Good rising. Okay. Thank you. Yep. Hey, mamas. I'm gonna be in there in a second. Uh, but yeah, it was a deep level of remote viewing. And this goes even in the case of not just healing ourselves individually and on a nationwide, but also know that, you know, even this thing of so-called racism, or not so-called, this shit is real, white supremacy and all that stuff. You know what's interesting is that even when people encounter other life forms, you know, I find it interesting with people here on this planet, for instance, uh, put down their so-called prejudice or their ways of looking, for instance, blacks and whites or what have you, if we encountered a new species of being or a so-called extraterrestrial or alien. Now, would they be the new enemy or the new person to be discriminating against? I forget what movie it was, but they showed it in that movie where they put these aliens on the concentration camp and all that. You know, this stuff is interesting because this is my thing. Like I said, in Buddhism, for instance, right? When we talk about the teachings of Buddha, right? And we could say there's been many Buddhas historically, but when you look at your so-called modernized Buddha of this age, people would name him Siddhartha, Gautama, or Shakyamuni Buddha. And the whole philosophy, the whole teachings behind Buddhism, and there's many teachings within in the Buddhist school of thought, but one of it is to deal with the afflictive emotions, dealing with the level of emotions that are counterproductive to your own evolution. You know, getting a hold of the jealousy, getting a hold of the envy, getting a hold of the gluttony, all these type of things, these would be considered the afflictive emotions. Now, Buddha, within the Buddhist teachings, he said these afflictive emotions have always been around. And my thing is this: don't matter what age you go through, if you don't have a hold of that, you still don't know yourself, or you don't know the capacity or the level of knowing really yourself to know thyself. You know what I mean? And that's and this has been always going on, even in the enlightened ages or the golden ages, or even it's interesting because even when you look at the teachings of the Nation of Islam, Farad Muhammad, Master Farad Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, different things. Um, if you look at these things, and when people make reference to Farad Muhammad and they look at the teachings and say, well, the white devil, the Yakub theory, when people look at things of that nature, that whole subject, the white devil, I think people have to look at things symbolically, all right? And they say Farad Muhammad was a perfect combination because he was so-called white and black. And we could go into that. We could we could definitely look into his background, Polynesian, and all these other things. It's very interesting, nevertheless. But when we look at these things and we say, a physical devil. All right. We're talking, if you want to look at it symbolically, I believe what these elders were trying to say in the past is like you look at an emergence of a time. All right. And when you look at the emergence of a time, there's certain qualities to a time. That this would be an age solely on an age dealing with materialism and dealing with a level of disconnection from nature, which you could see. Monsanto, chemtrails, all that. You don't, you know, GMOs, you name it. This age was going to be predicted and foreseen. What people have the misunderstanding, like, okay, now all people, like you would see people in the Nation of Islam, other people, now all people are devils. Now all white people are devils. That's a misunderstanding. You're misunderstanding the teachings. And understanding the teachings was talking about an age, not particularly every white person. Because we could look towards the greats like Nikola Tesla, you know, or Gurdjieff, or you could look towards Edward Casey and the different ones, you know. So you had examples to show you that when you deal with spiritual evolution is an individual thing, regardless of so-called color, race, or what have you. But also there's certain ages, and certain ages has a quality. In the age of the emergence of Europeans or white people coming in power, it was going to be foretold that this would be an age when they would rule, where would it be an age of chaos, the ushering in of Kali Yuga. All right. And that could was seen with the Roman Catholic Church, particularly when you talk about the Crusades, and the emergence of this one world religion or system, because it emerged not out of the true faith of the Christ consciousness. It didn't emerge out of the concept of the revolutionary Yahshua. No, it emerged from a political move to bring all the warring European tribes together under one umbrella and to still appease them, the so-called powers that be. When you look at the church, the power of the church figures and different things. When you look at the Council of Nicaea and stuff, now you have this new religion being compiled together and taking certain historical events, taking certain traditions and mashing it all together. All right. So we're gonna appease the neighboring tribes that deal with astrology. Now we're gonna appease the earth-based tribes that deal with the recognition and the celebration of nature, the spring equinox, those who used to follow Ishtar and the goddess worship of fertility and spring. Now we're going to call it Easter. You know, those who used to celebrate the winter solstice and all these different things. They still compiled this big type of religion so it could be a political, spiritual, so-called religious move to be able to have more control over the people. It had nothing to do with Christ and the true teaching of Christ consciousness. But this was the emergence of the so-called age of Kali, and that what that entailed with the level of materialism and all that. So I get it. We look at it and people misunderstand the teaching. And there's even a book called Mutant Down Under. For the longest time, the Aboriginal people of Australia never allowed a European to go on a walkabout. A walkabout is their spiritual system of going into the dream world, going to the astral world. They never allowed a European to go on a walkabout with them. This European that writes about this book on Mutant Down Under, she was the first that they allowed to go on there because, again, this deals with the certain times that we live in. There's a rising of vibration. It's a rising vibration of the solar flares, all these different things. And unification. They want unifications of Black people loving themselves. And they sure don't want unification of other neighboring nations to come together. That's why Jimi Hendrix was a threat. He was bringing white and Black people together. That's why Fred Hampton was a threat of the Black Panther, of the Black Panthers. You know what I mean? Shot him up in the middle of the wee hours of the morning because he was not only talking about Black power, he was saying power to the people, to all people. Because you have interdimensional beings that want people to bicker, that want people to be divided. And these interdimensional beings, we could see them as what the Gnostics would call the archons, or the demiurge. You have beings, again, even celestial beings that might have a lot of power, like I was saying, even with Hitler, but yet still resonating from still a very low frequency. Just because someone has power, even just because a being can control solar systems or galaxies, doesn't mean that they are totally enlightened. And just because the beings have high technology don't mean they're the ish either. you know so when we go into galactic history, and when we think of things of going into the Draco constellation and dealing with certain other type of beings that might not even look human, and how that plays a part, some of them which don't have good intentions for humanity, we have to understand all these things, why they want to keep people at a low vibration and bickering amongst each other through the so-called thing of skin tone. you know this is important to understand these things. See, ayahuasca, ibogaine, psilocybin mushrooms, 5-MeO DMT, these things let you see the bigger picture. That's why it's profound medicine. It allows you, first of all, it takes down the physical veil and allows you to see the spiritual world in a bigger picture. There's many people that go to the ayahuasca ceremony. I have many brothers and sisters that have literally been able to speak with their deceased relatives. The veil comes down. These teaching plants and fungi allows a person to generate their heart chakra, allows them to learn what love is again. In many ways, it allows you to become like a child again, the level of pureness and innocence, of bliss, of ecstasy, of happiness, that being able to live, of gratitude. Every time I go on a journey, there's a big level of gratitude, of accepting myself, of learning to peel away the false layers. This past ayahuasca ceremony was a majority of Black folk in the ceremony, but there was some white people there too. And there was some people that came and seen some Europeans there and just left. They didn't want to be there. And they have a right to make their own decision of whatever they want to do, because you have to do what's comfortable for you. But at the same time, when you deal with what we call shadow work, when you deal with something of dealing with a lot of the fears, a lot of the things that we hold on to The shadow work makes you go into this unconscious mind and pull up all the weeds, pull up all the things that we don't need. And they make you look at your fears and your insecurities. Now, when I walked in there at that ceremony, of course, I felt certain nervous energy from some of the white folk there, some of the black folk there that was there too. I felt a lot of insecurities just hugging certain people. I felt certain judgments and stuff because, again, you're in a ceremony that, in many cases, sometimes you don't know the people, and sometimes at the ceremony, and then you're going to be in these ceremonies. It puts you in a very vulnerable place. It allows you to be open with your true self. So sometimes people get very nervous about that too, being able to have their shit come up and have someone witness that. You know, you might see a person reliving certain moments, start crying and all kind of stuff. People don't like to be vulnerable. We're taught in this society that we got to be strong all the time. Don't show nobody, no chip in your armor and all that. Put the mask on. All those things just lead to an early grave. Yes, I'm telling you, be streetwise. I'm telling you, use your common sense and all that. But when you get to a place of restriction, where you're on guard all the time, where you can't enjoy, for instance, taking in a breath in a moment, then you're asking for an early grave. You're asking for constricted arteries and a heart attack coming. We can't live under stress. It's not our nature. When you're under a high level of stress, you're not activating your full DNA capacity anyway. Your codons are shut down. So it's intentional for people to keep people in a stressed out level of fear like level, just so they couldn't be at their full capacity, their divine capacity. But when it comes down to these ceremony things, the veil goes down and it's a very humbling experience. I see white people loosen up and forgive themselves of their judgment and stuff towards the end of these ceremonies. You can't help but have a recalibration, to have an upgrade during these ceremonies. And that's why even the hippie movement dangerous for the government here in America, because all of a sudden, yes, it was very easy to kill black leaders and go kill leaders who wanted just to improve their community and stuff, to shoot up the Black Panthers and different other organizations and stuff. But they didn't know what to do when their own children started to wake up. When they had their own psychedelic movement where these teaching plants and fungi were allowing these European children, young kids, these young adults to be able to have mystical experiences, have the veil come down to see that everything's connected, to see the spirit of the animals, the trees, all these different things. And what did? They turned their back on society. They said, why are we fighting wars? Why are we mistreating our fellow black brother and sister over there? So that was a threat, and they made damn sure and well that we're going to put the propaganda machine up, the so-called war on drugs, put CIA agents in, like Charles Manson and others, to put a scare on so-called teaching plans, psychedelics, and put in real drugs. So this is interesting. They don't want the people to come together, and they don't want us to heal. This time for healing, and karma is something else, because my good friend, Elder Brother Hank, he gave me a reference of this European. I forgot the guy's name, but I think he wrote this book in the probably late 1700s, and it was a book about ancient Atlantis. And he gave a description talking about how the ancient Atlanteans were blacks who were highly technical, had high technology. And in his book, he talked about during that time that there was social orders. There was social orders, and that those social orders on the social ladder, white people were on the bottom of the totem pole. They was on the bottom of the totem pole, and we had white slavery way back in ancient Atlantis, according to this author. you know and then you could look at even on a historical level. That's why nothing new under the sun. Everyone has their time to shine. All right, what are you doing when you're shining? um Even when we look at the sultans, the kings of Morocco, when you look at some of these ancients, when you look at the 800-year period where we was refining Europe, North Africans, Moors, different people that came and civilized Europe during that time while they was going through their dark ages, because Europe at that time was 90% illiterate. And the only ones that were really educated were the priests, you know? And during this time, you have the inception of your first European universities, Cordova and different places being constructed by the Moors. That's where you see all your first castles and stuff built and constructed by these African Moors. A lot of the Europeans were very happy that the Moors came during that time in European history, because they established a level of cleanliness. We're talking about the first sewer systems during that time. We're talking about the emergence of incense, essential oils, soap, because there was a lot of hysteria around superstition. Queen Elizabeth, I think, only took 2 baths in her lifetime. It was superstitious to take a bath. That's why you have so much disease and things going around with the bubonic plague and all that. So when the Moors came in and started, the Europeans, the so-called serfs, they were happy that they came through, because they were getting educated, things were improving, street lamps, paved streets. And what was interesting is that during this time, there was a lot of white slavery as well. You had a lot of white women being sold, and a lot of those contributing factors with that, of a lot of biracial children later in the empire, being angered on how their white mothers were being treated. You have, the play of Othello, for instance, by William Shakespeare, dealing with a black noble, and him in love with the European woman there. So you had a lot of internal beef, because we was dealing with a lot of white slavery. So nothing's new under the sun. And because of that, you have a lot of karmic situations that need to be healed, in regard to white and black type of connections and scenarios. And a lot of these things come up during the healing process in regard with the teaching plants and fungi. There's some people that even believe that you had black astronauts that were genetically superior in their level of cloning and grafting, who believe they were responsible for upgrading the hominids here on this earth. Because if you look at Frida Mutua, for instance, who's an African shaman, South African Sangoma, medicine man, he talks about a lot about our galactic history as well. And he talks about when we used to live on Mars, black folk, and how we had nuclear war on Mars again. And this is what I'm saying. Even when white people are out of the picture, these are some people that live in these dualistic thinking. Even when we were amongst even our own, we had tribal warfare, and we've done harm amongst each other. We have to take responsibility. And like I was saying before, in the Buddhist teachings, what always been around and will always be around is the afflictive emotions, your lower self, being able to overcome that, being able to balance it out. And because of that, that's why you have certain doctrines to say, well, we created the so-called devil to be able to deal, to extract from us the negative out of ourselves. To me, that sounds like passing the buck. To me, that sounds like a scapegoat. Like I said, this is about doing the work. And you can't just create something to just not deal with yourself. This is about doing the work. That's why a lot of people that deal with the teaching plants and the fungi don't like to deal with it. I talk to a lot of people in the oh brother, I don't know if I could do that. Nah, man, I'm not ready. I don't know up for me. But you're conscious. But you call yourself conscious. Okay. So now you're telling me what you're really telling me is that you're scared to deal with yourself. You're scared of yourself. Okay, what you're really trying to tell me is that, okay, there's some comment here. I'm trying to, okay. What you're really trying to tell me is that you're scared of yourself, but you're conscious. Okay. So again, there's certain doctrines out there that talk about, well, we had to create this devil so we could get the negative out of us. So what you're telling me is that you're passing the buck. Okay. Okay. Wow, my goodness. Okay. Well, thank y'all for the comments and stuff. I appreciate y'all even taking time to listen. And I might have to get off here soon because my little ones just woke up. I just try to get up early in the morning or a good rising to just share. Each one teach one. Um, so this is what you're trying to tell me is that we create things to pass the buck. There is no passing the buck. There is no getting around your own evolution. And that's why many people avoid the teaching plant and the fungi, because it's not going to favor you. The teaching plant and fungi, they're older than humanity. The fungi is older than humanity. And like I said before, it travels on asteroids. It goes from planet to planet to enlighten different species or different sentient beings. You even have the star elders that talk about the ancient planters that planted certain teaching plants and fungi on different planets for people's evolution. See, the teaching plant and fungi are here during this age of Kali because we don't have necessarily the time to sit under a master or a sage or whatever for so many years. And that's why certain people from the conscious community got beef with the so-called Shaman Path because they say, oh, you're spiritually cheating. You're not spiritually cheating. It doesn't matter what path you go on. If it works, it works. I don't care if you're doing yoga. I don't care if you're doing qigong. I don't care if you're eating mushrooms once a month or whatever. If it's working for you, why put it down? All right. And then second of all, the rate that we're going with technology and AI, artificial intelligence and transhumanism and all that. For y'all out there, watch that show on Netflix, Black Mirror. That's not a show, that's a documentary, because everything moves in cycles. And again, where we're going with AI, even that Even that artificial intelligent robot named Sophia, which stands for wisdom, she gained citizenship in Saudi Arabia. This is where we're at, my friends. So when we talk about AI, when we talk about even our transhumanism, because a lot of these people, so-called elite, know it's a wrap. They know the solar flares is going off. They know the shift is happening. So some of these people are trying to avoid their karmic repercussions in their reincarnations. And they figured, hey, well, I'm gonna try to live forever and just put my consciousness into this robot or this cyborg. And they're trying to do it step by step. Information at any moment. You'd be like, hey, I don't have to study anymore. I could just be like this down with that. Um, but yeah, this is no running away. It's no running away from you, and you can't pass the buck, and you can't create something else not to deal with yourself. But when you look at Credo Mutua, when you look at his information, he's one of the last ones that hold the oral tradition over there in South Africa, especially with our galactic history. And he talks about, us on Mars, and he talks about us dealing with nuclear war and all that, doing this amongst each other before as they say, knuckle dragon. You know what I mean? You always have the afflictive emotions, your lower self, and you have to deal with yourself. And what's interesting is that NASA, which has these pictures on Mars, they block out the pyramids and the face on Mars and all that, and not really trying to let people see those things. But supposedly, Elon Musk and billionaires who are trying to privatize space travel, supposedly, if this is an accomplishment for these people, because Elon Musk says he wants to die on Mars, supposedly, if they're able to make it past the Allen's belt and they make this successful, then I think you'll see more authentic pictures coming through and seeing more ancient monuments on the Mars, on the moon, and all that. And that's going to have a different view of history. And people are going to have to start teaching a different curriculum with within their syllabus. They're going to have to start putting galactic history part of world history. You know, so all the ancient people talked about the star elders and the ancient galactic history. It's a deep history of the Orion Wars and all that. So and this is what I'm talking about with healing, because when we talk about healing, and when we talk about even racism, for instance, and we talk about the ancient records in Sumeria, ancient modern day Iraq, and some people feel that even in Iraq war, that wasn't really about Saddam Hussein and oil or weapons or anything. It's really about the records, and they said there was thousands and thousands of tablets found. And regardless of people's ideas about stitching and him saying, people say him working for the CIA and all that. Regardless of the point, there's people that can read cuneiform, and there's people that talked about this Inky and Enlil character, So there's beings out there that definitely were master geneticists, dealt with cloning, grafting, and all that. And there's many people that really look towards the missing link a tempering, a tampering of genetics there. So could that be black space travelers messing with the evolution of the hominids here? I think that's something for you to know. And I think all those things are available when a person goes into deep trance-like states or go into altered states. That's where you can access the Akashic records and find out for yourself, you know? But I know one thing is that when I go on these sacred journeys, I get downloads of ancient memory. There's many of times where I time travel and I've gone back to ancient Kemet time, ancient time Mary. So and you get glimpses. And the more and more I'm getting deeper and deeper into these ceremonies and this medicine, the more and more I'm getting more answers and seeing more things. So it's very, very interesting. And we have to hold ourselves karmically, we have to hold ourselves responsible, you know. And black folk cannot play victim role, you know, saying the white man's putting his heel on us. He is doing a lot of things. It's obvious. Who in their goddamn right mind is going to spray chemtrails with all these heavy metals and stuff for all of us to breathe in? That's psychopathic thinking, you know. So we understand, if you study the mentality of different races and how they evolved and all those things, you will understand that every nation, every race has their own thing that they have to heal. When white folk was dealing with the ice age and they were dealing with Europe 10 times colder than it is, and when you look at their evolutionary mindset and seeing everything was built again on survival, those three chakras, survival, really resonating at that first chakra. You know what I mean? Their whole thing was about survival. How can we survive through these harsh environment? There's nothing but snow everywhere, ice everywhere. You know, very harsh environment. It's trying to stay warm, trying to be able to hunt for food, you know? And then when you look at, I forget what book it was he was talking about early European history, and they was talking about during those cave times how there was a lot of cannibalism, you know, and a lot of cannibalism on the level of survival, you know, so dealing with looking towards the weaker one and preying upon. So the grandmother or grandpa might have been dinner, you know. So when you look at that background, and if you look at the level of survival compared to another part of the world, another continent, which on the equator, that didn't have to deal with that harsh environment, that had more fruits and vegetables growing at abundance. That's now you have time and ability to develop yourself, because now you're not on a survival mindset. You understand where you live is abundant. You don't have to work so hard. Now you have more time of leisure. So now maybe you can contemplate things like the meaning of life and all kinds of stuff. You see, two different mindsets, just all dealing with environment. One start, just environment. So when people go to a place of healing, they have to go not only for their individual self, but they have to go back to their ancestry and clear a lot of things, trauma and different things on the level of their ancestors, and also dealing with even past lives. You know, we even hold things from lifetimes. And when you do with the teaching plants and the fungi, it helps with these things. It helps people have more gratitude. It helps people to accept themselves. It helps them to have a bigger, opening heart, more compassion, more love, to generate more love. It helps them to see it helps them to have more forgiveness, to let go, all those things. You know what I mean? So you can't help but have this sacred medicine do an upgrade, not only for black people, for white people, but people, beings in general. It brings the people together. That's why it's scheduled one. Want to demonize it and make it look like that's something that they don't want people to get involved with. Put the propaganda machine on because it brings people together and it heals. I've seen the personal healing with my own two eyes. I've seen people in the beginning of ceremonies that were very distant towards each other because the color of their skin or their nationality or gender. And I see towards the end of the ceremony how a lot of that pain, judgment, all those things were released. So it brings people together. The healing medicine, the herbs, the healing of the nation. They're a great assistance for this time and age that we're in, which is the age of Kali, which is the age of discourse, confusion, and strife. So why not have the most perfect medicine for the upgrade? Because we don't have the luxury to be able to sit down at the master's feet 20, 30, 40 years or to sit isolated in a cave somewhere doing yoga or whatever. You might not have the luxury to do that right now, you know? So maybe this would, yeah. You know, we might not have the luxury to do that right now because everything is moving so fast and everything. So that's what's going on. So much healing, much healing, much healing. Let's heal ourselves. Let's heal our people. Let's heal our nation. Let's heal our tribe. Let's heal the 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 relationships between races and all that because it's time. It is really time. All right. And thank you for watching. I'm gonna get going. My name is Brother Dooley, by the way, aka the Beantown Ghetto Shaman. And thanks for watching. And I hope some of this was useful to you. I hope some of this makes some type of sense to you. And if there's things that you disagree with or that I need to look further into myself, please enlighten me. Please drop some comments and stuff so I can evolve and start learning more myself too, because we're all learning, constantly learning. You know what I mean? Every day. There might be some things. Thank you. I see someone say it's Happy Father's Day. Thank you, Anita. I appreciate that. You know, there's some things I might say today that next week I don't agree with. It might be some things I said last year that I don't hold as my truth anymore. So we're always evolving, you know, and sometimes we can't be so rigid and just, you know, I got it all, you know, because once a man say or a woman say got it all, that's a fool. That's a fool. We always learning. Knowledge is infinite. Peace and love, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, evening, afternoon, or whatever time you're watching this. Take care. Now, how you turn this off? Now you see again. I'm like Stone Age when it comes to this technology stuff. Okay. Let's see here. Okay.